Everybody, Jimmy Smith, back with another video, this time inspired a bit by Jason Herzog's early stoppage when it came to Jared Cannonier versus Nasruddin Imavov. Got me thinking about other early stoppages that I've seen in my MMA years, and these are the ones that stood out to me. Now, everyone's going to have their favorites. I didn't go through any late stoppages. These were all early ones. Fight could have gone on a little bit longer. And there's some themes that we're going to get to in a second. But these are the ones that just kind of stood out in my mind. I was sitting there in my mental Rolodex. I was like, man, there's been some bad stoppages out there. Here are some of the worst ones that stand out to me. We're going to start off with one that's going to be a theme here. Mac Danzig versus handsome Matt Wyman. This was on the Liddell versus Franklin undercard, UFC 115, where a minute 45 in, Mac Danzig, who was... number one, big on the local scene in Southern California. I saw him fight quite a few times. Won the Ultimate Fighter in dominant fashion. All right, wiped out pretty much everybody. He's the most technical guy on there. And never really had a run in the UFC. Just, against great. I had a couple good wins. Knocked out Joe Daddy Stevenson with a left hook. But, never really established himself. Who else did he beat? Mark Bocek. But never beat any name guys. Never really had a great run. He complained that he had been through too many fights by this point. He was starting to have, some issues that made him retire before he really had a UFC run. Anyway, he took on handsome Matt Wyman, another guy, good, not great, solid mid-level guy. And minute 45 in, he falls for a guillotine from Matt Wyman. And this will be a theme. Matt Wyman turns to the referee and says, he's out. Referee steps in. Mac Danzig is fine. Literally looks up like, what the hell is going on? Referee stopped it. It's too late. Can't do anything about it. It was Yves Levine, generally a pretty good referee. Had a couple questionable calls, but generally a good referee. Can't take a fighter's word for it that the other guy's out, ever. You can't do that. You can say, oh, he's out. Okay, and you stop it, and once it's stopped, it's over. So you can't take the other guy's word for it. Another theme, once again, that we'll get to is chokes look really bad. When someone passes out from a choke, nothing really happens. It's not the same damage as a knockout at all. So if someone gets knocked out and you stop the fight and they wake up again, you can go, okay, well, I didn't want to save you for more damage. If you get choked, the worst that happens is you pass out. You have to hold a choke for minutes to actually cause permanent damage and death. You have to hold it for a long time. So someone passing out from a choke looks bad, but it doesn't really do anything. So the problem I have with a lot of these early stoppages, and a lot of them are chokes, is if the referee had just waited a little bit longer to make sure that they're out, nothing can happen in that intervening few seconds of you raising their hand and it flops down, or whatever the deal is. However you check, it's always worth the extra check. Now, we'll have some that are from strikes, and you'll understand that, you can't have somebody eat 3 or 4 more strikes while you're double checking. A choke is essentially harmless other than it looks really bad when people choke out. There. So, Matt Wyman, Mac Danzig, early stoppage, really bad. They had a rematch. Matt Wyman won that by decision. So, at least the better. And that'll be a theme here, too. But got a chance at redemption. Couldn't do it against in the, it was 2011 they rematched. But handsome Matt Wyman won again. Another one that is way back. Most of you will not remember it at all. But Aaron Riley. For people that, you got to be as old as me. Remember, Aaron Riley, in the hook and shoot days, the promotion Midwest, had some wars with Eve Edwards, really put him on the map. The guy was a blood and guts kind of warrior. Robbie Lawler, fought Robbie Lawler in the UFC, people who remember that. Anyway, he fought a guy named Shane Nelson, UFC 96, gets dropped like 30 seconds into the fight, and is pretty good. It wasn't a flash knockout at all. Literally knocked him down. He's still okay. He's operating in guard, and the referee, for some reason, 44 seconds in the fight, steps in and stops the fight. Not just early, bizarre. It wasn't like he went out and woke up again, and the referee was worried about his health. He doesn't go out at all. He barely loses his balance. And the hammer fists aren't great. It wasn't like he landed a big shot, and the referee's concerned about his head ricocheted off the canvas. Nothing. Referee steps in the middle of a barrage that is being dealt with very, very well, and for no reason, 44 seconds in. Now, this is a while ago. Once again, we're before UFC 100. It is, I don't know who the referee is for this one, but it was just bizarre. It was somebody that I don't think was a full-time referee for the UFC. Bad stoppage. Head to toe. There's no other way to say it. Now, once again, they rematch. This time, Aaron Riley came out on top. End up getting redemption with this one. But a bizarre stoppage in that there didn't seem to be a real reason for it at all. Nothing that an outsider would go, okay, this fight might be over. So really bad stoppage, but not in a particularly significant fight. This is one that really stands out to me because it's right in the era of my early fandom. This is 2003. Two fighters that were big for that era. Phil Baroni, Evan Tanner. Their first one was UFC 46. And what had happened was Phil Baroni, as Phil Baroni does, Larry Landless was a referee. I remember this. Larry Landless was Southern California guy. My first fight was against a Larry Landless coached fighter. Submission Factory, I think is what his gym was called back then. Anyway, Larry Landless was an early UFC referee. And what happened was Phil Baroni, one of the most heavy-handed guys in the UFC of that time. But explosive, didn't pace himself great, didn't always make the right decisions. Kind of like a middleweight Michael Chandler, go out there, boom, 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 throw big punches, and either get you out of there, or he had a tendency to run out of gas late. And anyway, in this case, against Evan Tanner, clips him early, hurts him. Evan's still with it, right? Still trying to fight back, still trying to get in clinch position, but he's eating punches as he's doing all this stuff. At the worst time possible, he's stumbling, he's kind of doing one of these, and this is before the unified rules of MMA. Larry Landless, timeout, and checks a cut on Evan Tanner's eye. They don't do that anymore, by the way. So they only stop it if there's a reason, if it's a moment in which there's no action. Stops in the middle of a barrage where it looks like Evan Tanner's about to go out. They stop it, check the cut, restart the fight, and Evan's got a little more energy, gets it in clinch position, takes Phil Baroni down, landing ground and pound, and has him fully mounted. And Larry Landless bizarrely goes, "Do you want out?" to Phil Baroni. You never ask a fighter if they want out, because if they want out, they'll freaking tap, okay? You don't ask a fighter if they want out. You ask a fighter, "Are you okay?" Maybe. Number one, you can't expect a fighter to have a conversation with somebody while somebody's punching him in the face. So he's looking at Larry Landless and says, like, yeah. Well, what he thinks he's saying is, "Are you okay?" That's what most refs in that situation, in that era, would ask. "Are you okay?" He assumes he's asking if he's okay, and he goes, "Ah." Larry Landless stops the fight. And he goes, "Asked if you wanted out. You said okay." And Phil Baroni's like, "I thought you were saying, "Are you all right?" Which is what most referees would ask. "If I want out, I'll tap." So the question itself didn't make any sense at all. And to expect Phil Baroni to, once again, consciously be aware of what a referee is asking him while Evan Tanner's beating the crap out of him is just stupid and bad refereeing. And Larry Landless just bungled that one bad. Phil Baroni went off, threw a punch at him, which today would get you a lengthy suspension. Back then, in those days, okay, hey, don't do that. But that was about it. Anyway, they had a rematch, and Evan Tanner won by decision. So a bizarre one all the way through. Larry Landless gave that one away because I thought Evan was pretty much out on his feet even before that happened. So Phil Baroni, Evan Tanner, another really bad early stoppage. One from your era, all you guys, you probably remember. Robbie Lawler, of course, taking on Ben Askren in Ben Askren's UFC debut. That was in 2019, UFC 235. Another one where a choked fighter, once again, worst thing that happens is you pass out, which looks really bad, but doesn't really do anything. So it always bugs me when a referee doesn't give extra time to a choke, because the worst that happens is you just pass out and you get a little sleep. It's not the end of the world. So if people that don't remember, Robbie Lawler came out swinging all over Ben Askren. Then Ben Askren gets in a scramble, as he does, funky Ben Askren, gets a Bulldog choke. And what got me about this one is he does this, right? Robbie Lawler gives the referee, Herb Dean, a thumbs up, "I'm okay," and Herb Dean stops the fight. I couldn't believe it. Now, was the choke good? I don't know. Bulldog chokes aren't that secure. It's this on the side. They're tough, but if you can scramble, you can get out. It's not like a rear naked hooks in, you're going to sleep, and if the referee stops it, maybe, it's a little early, but you aren't going anywhere anyway. Bulldog chokes are, by definition, a position that's hard to secure, right? So there's a chance Robbie could have beasted out or gotten a roll and been able to get out of the situation. I remember, I think it was Henner Gracie saying that the stoppage was good. And I said, guys, look, the way I saw it is Robbie jumps up immediately and starts arguing with Herb Dean. In a real Bulldog choke where you are out, if they let you go, you're not hopping up and going, "Hey, wait," you hop up and fall down again, right? You're out. If you're really out from a choke, you don't hop up and say anything because you're out. And the idea that he woke up right when he let him go, you couldn't hop back to your feet like that and have a conversation. You'd be doing one of these because you're just waking up again, right? So bad stoppage. Thought Herb Dean bungled that one. I thought Herb Dean at this point, in his career, a little side note, I thought Herb Dean was making a lot of mistakes, man. And like he still gets these huge pops from these UFC crowds, and I was like, man, it seems like fans are more on other referees who make big mistakes than Herb Dean, I don't really get why. I thought Herb Dean had made a couple bad ones, and this was one of them, but cost Robbie Lawler that fight. And what we saw from Ben after that was Ben's only win in the UFC. So the idea that Robbie couldn't have come back and won, I think that's, that may have been, the one that was kind of gifted to Ben Askren in his career. So let's go to one that I called in Bellator, Saad Awad versus Dave the Caveman Rickles. That was Bellator 94. That was in 2013. This is a very interesting study because of the timing of it. What had happened was they had already fought for 2 rounds, and I think Saad Awad had won both of them, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time. And but it was Rickles was in it, but Saad Awad was getting takedowns when he needed, had good ground and pound, had good positions and everything. And then at the end of round number 2, Dave Rickles cracks him, boom, and drops Saad Awad. Bell rings, ding. Saad Awad, in the middle of the ring, goes, and puts his hands behind his head. Referee looks down and waves off the fight. And Saad Awad goes, what are you doing? He never gave him an opportunity to get to his corner, meaning he didn't say, get up, get to your corner. If you can, and you're stumbling around, referee can stop the fight. He didn't even say, get up. He didn't stop the fight before the bell. So it wasn't a knockout. He didn't think he was knocked out because he would have stopped it before the bell. And apparently it was the idea that he didn't get up. Well, you didn't tell him to get up. And the rules at the time, 2013, were the guy wants to, and I talked to Big John McCarthy about this, because the guy wants to lay in the middle of the octagon the whole time. He can't. There was no rule at the time that you have to be able to get to your corner. But he didn't even say, get up, get to your corner. If he was staggering around, okay, this guy can't continue, that would have made sense. He stops it while he's sitting there with his hands behind his head. But like this, like rolling his eyes, I got dropped right before the end of the round. And the referee waves off the fight. And I remember I went, that is bad. Because it's one or the other. Either he's knocked out before the bell, or he made it and you let him get back to his corner. Great example of that is Anderson Silva, Rich Franklin in their second fight. Rich is out. I think it was a right hand by Anderson Silva. Knocks him out. Bing! And right as the bell goes off, he drops like a sack of potatoes. And Matt Hume, his coach, walks over, picks him up, and carries him to the corner. Now, from what I understand, you can't do that anymore. If you can't walk to the corner under your own power, fight's over. That wasn't the rule back then. Matt Hume literally picks him up, once again, like a sack of potatoes, carries him to his corner. So the referee doesn't have time to go, wait a second, he's out. You got to give the guy the opportunity at least to get up. And Saad Awad was not given that opportunity at all. It was, once again, not just a bad stoppage, a really bizarre stoppage that as the commentator for Bellator, I got to explain to the audience, like, dude, you can't really do that. You either have to let him try to get up or you say it's a knockout before the bell. And you didn't do either one. So it was a really bizarre, weird knockout. The referee, I forget who it was, came over and started talking to me, explaining to me. And I went, dude, you bungled it. I don't know what to tell you. And I had to explain on air that it doesn't make sense, but, I wasn't screaming at the guy, but I was like, justify it all day. You made a bad call. Should have let the guy try to get up and get to his corner. If he stumbles then you can do it. So anyway, Saad Awad, Dave Rickles, bad early stoppage. It was really, really super bizarre. That was one of those that just didn't make a lot of sense at all to me. Another one for the old timers, if I can get this one in here, is Kazushi Sakuraba. A lot of people forget because you remember his Pride run more than his run in the UFC. He did fight in the UFC. Both fights were against Conan Silveira, who is, of course, a coach now in American Top Team. He's one of the original Carlson Gracie guys, blah, blah, blah. And what people a lot of times forget about this is it was only Sakuraba's second fight. He hadn't won. He had a loss to Kimo Leopoldo, which I have heard may have been a work in Japan. I don't know. Please, someone who knows better than I do, because I've seen the fight, but I've heard from people there that it, was in time in Japan when pro wrestling and MMA weren't really that separate, and that it was a work. I don't know, but anyway, he had lost to Kimo. He's taken on Conan Silveira, and what had happened was this is the tournament days, and on one side of the bracket was Yoji Anjo and Tank Abbott. And on the other side was Conan Silveira versus Kazushi Sakuraba. It was mostly on the feet. He's trying to take Conan down. Can't really take him down. And Conan is landing some punches. Conan was, by the way, a big heavyweight. Kazushi Sakuraba was not at all. He's not a big light heavyweight. And so anyway, he's eating some punches. He eats a shot right as he's diving for a single leg. Big John McCarthy, referee, thought that the shot knocked him down and out. It didn't. He's dropping for a single leg. So he drops right as the punch hits him. He grabs the leg, and Big John waves off the fight. Says it's over. Kazushi Sakuraba, obviously furious. Japanese crowd, furious. Because Yoji Anjo, on the other side of the bracket, lost to Tank Abbott. So the only person who make the finals is Kazushi Sakuraba, and he loses on a bad stoppage. Anyway, Tank, I believe, broke his hand against Yoji Anjo. So they didn't have a final. This is the tournament days, once again. So what they did is they went, that was a no contest, rematch for the finals. He ends up, what happens is Conan, and I haven't talked to Conan about this, but what it looked like is Conan won the striking battle in the first fight and went, I'm going to submit him in the second one, and went into a grappling match with Kazushi frickin' Sakuraba. Didn't probably know what he was getting himself into at the time. Kazushi Sakuraba, once again, had only fought once, and at this point, twice. So he was costing Gracie black belt, thought he was fine. Holds on to Kimura too long. Kazushi Sakuraba steps over his head and gets the armbar and gets finished. So, but that early stoppage was one of those that was bizarre at the time. You understand why he did it. He did drop. It was just a bad call by Big John in the moment. And the reason is the pressure of being in Japan. We need a finale. All right, that one's a no contest. It was kind of the Wild West years of MMA, so they got a redo on that one. So those are some of the early stoppages that sprung to mind. There are a million more. Everyone has their favorites. Put them in the comments section. I'll talk to you next time. Appreciate you.